the undercover beret that operated as a Russian spy. Peter Debbins seemed like an unlikely spy, a member of the elite Green Berets, a patriot who swore an oath to defend America against its enemies. Yet behind the facade of honor and duty lurked a hidden betrayal that would shake the foundations of national security. As a young man, Debbins had been an Army cadet and Russian language student. It was here that his Russian connections first reached out with an irresistible offer, a chance to serve the motherland he was so passionate towards. But how did an elite U.S. soldier betray the country he swore to protect to serve the enemy? And what motivated him to do so? Today, we're going to dive into the story of one of America's worst espionage convicts, Peter Debbins, the undercover beret who operated as a Russian spy. Peter Raphael Dubinsky Debbins was born in 1975 and raised in Minnesota. Despite his Midwestern birth, Debbins developed an interest in Russia, partly due to his mother's heritage. Debbins' mom was actually born in the Soviet Union, and from a young age, he became fascinated by his familial roots and the culture of Russia and the former Soviet Union. This interest stemmed in large part from the stories told by his grandmother, who immigrated to the U.S. from the Soviet Union. She would regale the young Debbins with tales of life under communism in the USSR. As he grew older, this childhood fantasy developed into an academic pursuit. Debbins studied Russian language and history throughout high school and chose to pursue international relations, focusing on Russia and Eastern Europe during his undergraduate education at the University of Minnesota. He became engrossed with Cold War-era politics and rivalries. Debbins saw knowledge of the Russian language and culture as crucial for a career in global affairs and national security. Before we continue, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell to get notified anytime we post amazing videos like this. Alright, back to the video. In 1996, at 21 years old and nearing completion of his bachelor's degree, Debbins spent a semester abroad in Russia as part of a university exchange program. It was his first time visiting the country about which he had studied so intensely. Immersed in Russian culture and language, his connection to the land of his ancestors was reinforced. Debbins relished the challenge of navigating daily life in post-Soviet Russia and vowed to return soon. The trip only strengthened his resolve to be involved in U.S.-Russian relations professionally. Upon his return to the University of Minnesota, Debbins made another important life decision: to join the school's Reserve Officers Training Corps (ROTC) program in preparation for a career as a military officer. He graduated in 1997 and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Seeing it as an exciting opportunity to utilize his Russian skills in service of national security objectives. After graduating and commissioning, Debbins eagerly awaited his first duty assignment from the Army. In 1998, he was deployed to South Korea as a young lieutenant. Serving overseas for the first time, Debbins immersed himself in his role of helping lead and protect his platoon. After settling into a routine at his new assignment, his thoughts couldn't help but drift back to Russia. His childhood, intrigued with the culture, never faded. Debbins yearned for his next opportunity to engage with the country that had captivated him from such a young age. Fate intervened the following year when Debbins met a Russian woman, the daughter of a Russian colonel, while on leave. Swept up in a whirlwind romance, the couple quickly became engaged. Debbins obtained permission from his commanders to travel to Russia to visit his fiancée and her family. On this trip, his second to Russia, the 21-year-old Debbins came to the attention of the GRU, Russia's military intelligence agency. The GRU took an interest in this young American officer with an unusual affection for and connection to Russia. Debbins was invited to meet with GRU agents over drinks at a hotel, seemingly for casual conversation. By the end of the meeting, Debbins had been showered with gifts, a bottle of fine cognac, the equivalent of $1,000 in cash, and even a Russian military uniform. The agents made clear that there could be additional favors and financial compensation if Debbins was willing to cooperate as an asset for Russian intelligence. Intoxicated by the attention and enticements, Debbins agreed to work with the GRU under the code name I.K. Lesnikov. If he ever needed to urgently contact his new handlers, Debbins was given a distress signal system. He only needed to send a postcard with the message, "Happy Mother's Day" or "Happy Victory Day," and his handlers would know to initiate contact. Debbins returned to his unit in South Korea with a secret now known to the Russian GRU. He considered himself eager to serve his beloved Russia, later proclaiming himself a loyal son of Russia. Over the next 2 years, Debbins provided information to his handlers whenever feasible: troop strength, mission details, and equipment capabilities. It was an act of betrayal against his U.S. Army comrades, but Debbins convinced himself he was on the right side of history in the post-Cold War world. In 2001, Debbins' military career advanced when he was selected for the Special Forces Qualification Course, the intensive training program for the elite Army Green Berets. Debbins thrived in a demanding environment, earning his Green Beret in 2003. Though now a member of one of the military's most selective and decorated units, internally, Debbins still considered himself loyal to Russia. Over the next 2 years, he deployed multiple times with his ODA Special Forces team to Azerbaijan, a former Soviet republic. On these deployments, Debbins continued to meet covertly with GRU contacts, passing along classified details that compromised ongoing U.S. military operations. Debbins' duplicity finally caught up with him in 2005 upon returning from an Azerbaijan deployment. During this particular mission, Debbins had committed multiple breaches of security protocols, bringing his wife along and allowing her access to his government-issued mobile phone and other devices. These missteps triggered an investigation, resulting in Debbins losing his high-level security clearances and subsequently being discharged honorably from the Army. He left the military a bitter man, angry at what he perceived as unjust treatment. Debbins decided to take out his frustration on his former Special Forces colleagues. He reached out to his GRU contacts, offering to expose even more classified details on Green Beret capabilities and operations in Europe. Debbins spitefully disclosed the names of team members he considered potential intelligence assets for Russia, as well as tactics, training, and procedures that could compromise operational security. This stunning betrayal from one of their former captains left members of the Special Forces community reeling. They could not conceive of what would motivate Debbins to turn so forcefully against his sworn brethren in arms. In reality, his motivations were a complicated mixture of grievance, ego, greed, and distorted political worldview. The ideological zeal of his early spy career had warped into resentment, opportunism, and still a deep connection to Russia itself. In the coming years, the true depths of Debbins' treachery would only deepen. His security clearances were eventually reinstated in 2008, opening up an even more dangerous second act with an opportunity to endanger U.S. national security. Over the next decade, Debbins held a series of sensitive government and defense contractors' jobs, gaining access to highly classified information across a range of security domains. From 2008 through 2010, he worked for an intelligence agency, likely the NSA, in cyber threat analysis. Then from 2011 to 2013, Debbins was a contractor for the Army INSCOM program, developing capabilities to counter enemy cyber attacks. Somehow, he was able to pass background investigations despite the red flags in his record. Perhaps most alarmingly, Debbins obtained TS/SCI security clearances required to work on some of the military's most secretive programs from 2014 to 2019. During this period, his roles included a stint with Jacobs Technology, assessing chemical and biological weapons, along with other classified assignments. All the while, Debbins was meeting periodically with his GRU contacts, answering questions and passing along secrets at each opportunity. After nearly 15 years of spying for Russia, old motivations faded away and his treachery became purely transactional, selling out his country strictly for cash. Despite the 2010 FBI questioning, he arrogantly eluded scrutiny for years until it all came crashing down in 2019 after one final fatal mistake. That year, as part of the standard process for renewing his TS/SCI security clearances, Debbins submitted to a mandatory counterintelligence polygraph test. The examiner confronted Debbins with allegations of espionage activities. Under pressure, Debbins finally cracked and made a full confession about his 15 years of spying for Russia while serving in the Army and later as a government contractor. He admitted compromising details about his own Special Forces team, multiple units deployed overseas, advanced surveillance technologies, even cyber vulnerabilities that Russia could exploit in U.S. systems. The confession was a stunning revelation for the Army and national security community. All the way back to his first trips to Russia in the late 90s, Debbins had lived a double life as an agent of a foreign adversary. He admitted to providing classified information and endangering U.S. operations repeatedly over that period. From his days as a young officer up through his work on some of the nation's most critical defense programs, federal prosecutors spent the remainder of 2019 and 2020 building an airtight case of conspiracy to commit espionage against Debbins. He initially pleaded not guilty, but the evidence was overwhelming. Finally, in November 2020, he reversed course and officially pleaded guilty. On November 18, 2020, Debbins entered a guilty plea in federal court in Alexandria, Virginia, acknowledging one count of conspiracy to commit espionage, an offense that could result in a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. When looking back on his decisions, Debbins admitted to U.S. prosecutors that he had this big idea of being a savior in Russia, thinking it could help free them from their harsh government. So he was pretty excited when they reached out to him. With Russia's involvement in the 2016 election still fresh, the Debbins spy case renewed concerns about vulnerabilities to foreign intelligence interference. In July 2021, Debbins received his ultimate sentence, 15 years and 8 months in federal prison for the damaging betrayals of his country that unfolded over 2 decades. The Debbins case left the U.S. intelligence community reeling and prompted difficult questions about how such a breach could have occurred undetected for so long. Some faulted the inability of background checks and polygraph tests to surface the warning signs in Debbins' past. Others pointed to the failure to follow up on the original Russian contacts from 1996 through 1998. Institutional deficiencies had allowed Debbins to exploit the system for his own gain. The sentencing was the final chapter in a twisted saga spanning 25 years. Debbins' initial motivations were some mix of youthful naivety, ideological conviction, and Russian patriotism. But over time, he descended into pettiness, vengeance, greed, and a blithe willingness to compromise U.S. national security. In the end, Debbins caused immense damage by exploiting almost every avenue of access possible. As an Army officer, private contractor, and Russian mole, the case of Peter Debbins provides a cautionary tale of an insider threat enabled by security lapses. It also highlights the immense difficulties of identifying and stopping acts of individual betrayal. Debbins has plenty of time to reflect on his crimes while serving his lengthy prison sentence. But the ripple effects of his duplicity will continue shaping U.S. counterintelligence efforts for years to come. Debbins definitely had an interesting life as a spy, and his betrayal will definitely play a major role in shaping U.S. security in the future. Do you think his 15-year sentence was enough, or should he have received even more punishment for endangering national security? Share your thoughts and opinions with us in the comments.